Well, Chad, I'll be honest with you. At the beginning of today, our plan was to make a video called Buying and Selling the Banned Cards and walk you through our opinions and timelines on what we thought maybe the prices of these would be eventually, what we thought you would be best, lowest risk to acquire them for, and how you could use them going forward if you already had them or wanted to acquire them. Jake, we've got a little bit of a different combo to have today.
I like that you called the commenters chat.
It's built in. It's like ingrained in me at this point.
Yeah, this story is developing. The idea was to move on. We had these bans and it kind of came with a ton of opinions, as many of you know. No shortage of opinions.
No.
We did a couple videos covering those bans, our initial reaction, which was more emotional. Then we had a, the day 2 kind of talk, and we even covered it on a stream after that. The idea was like, okay, this has happened. Some of us like it, some of us don't. Some of us reveling in the despair of others to no end. Just like, yeah, you take that. You spent money on cards. You deserve it.
On both sides. There was a lot of that from the non-competitive to the competitive crowd. There was just, it was all over the place with that. We're past that. We are past that. I think we're...
we want people spent hard-earned money.
Yes.
They felt bad about it. People want the health of the format to be good. It's easy to understand both arguments. But the story continues to develop, and so today a big thing happened. The Wizards of the Coast is essentially dissolving the RC, or the RC is dissolving itself. You know, I don't know exactly how this is going to go down, but
yeah, that distinction I think is kind of at the core of this. Even us explaining that, having to kind of pseudo explain it from both angles, I think is very important, because at this point, RC dissolving itself, WotC's influence over the RC, like all of that is now big question, because with WotC now completely assuming control of the Commander format per this announcement today, it just sort of reopens Pandora's box.
Yeah, it's definitely not, the door's not closed. We're keeping it propped open by cinder block at this point. It's just kind of like this is something that's going to continue to happen. People have still, to this day, even though it was last week's news, people are still trickling out their takes on the bans. You get player takes, pretty much everybody who's a creator in the space has given their sort of take on it. You have a lot of people on Twitter giving their takes, people that are part of the CAG, the Commander Advisory Group. Those people are like resigning. If the RC is gone, I imagine the Commander Advisory Group is not a kaput as well.
I was thinking about that too. They don't specifically say it, but it's like,
it's understood.
If milk delivery was part of my milk company, that delivery part is probably not remaining if my milk company goes under. You know what I'm saying?
You're always able to make my smooth brain understand how things work.
Bro, clunky metaphors are just one of the many things I offer over here at Joel Bozo Industries.
That's right. Man, what a time for people. You had a lot of people that got like threats and stuff. A lot of people wanting to distance themselves from this.
Understandably.
None of that is good.
Right. And we'll repeat it. That's abhorrent.
Yeah.
There should be no, like, we can disagree without threatening other people or criticizing them or even calling them names. Like, just take it simple as we possibly can. It is possible to disagree with someone. Jake and I disagree about pieces of this. I've very publicly disagreed with prominent content creators and players and designers about this. Those conversations have always been amicable. We disagree, shake hands, we're moving on. It's when it gets into threats, it's when it gets into this over-the-topness that we don't want to associate with either. We would hope that there's nothing like this in our community. We've done a pretty good job of stamping this kind of attitude out because we encourage healthy debate, disagreement. That's what we want. But to sit here and death threats and names and personal attacks and criticisms and schadenfreude, there's just been a really sad overall week. Even though we as content creators have a stake in this to personally benefit from all of this drama by making videos, I just want to get ahead of people saying that. We get it. It's a weird dichotomy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but we're here and we're trying to navigate it through it the best we can. We hope we're doing an okay job.
People like to just get everyone's take, especially when you don't really know. It's a game that you love. Oh my God! Imagine if people were as impassioned about world events as they were about their games. But we're not even going to dig into that. But I will say this is a Yeah, it's hard to ignore that because yes, just by us simply putting a video on YouTube to talk about it, we benefit from it from people watching it. We recognize that. That's how we've built our existence. Typically, we talk about low risk pickups
cheap
or
cards to
commander cards that we like and top 10s and stuff like that. It's not like this, but this is something that we're passionate about because we do play Commander. Anybody who watches this channel knows that we keep up with Commander all the time. We're constantly editing decks and building new things and that kind of thing. We just kind of got to be a reminder to people to, you know, take it easy and let it just kind of play out. At the end of the day, anybody who did take a massive investment in buying jeweled loti and mana crypts and just like hoarding docksides, I don't think anybody would have been like hoarding docksides, but I do know people were like buying crypts and lotus and that kind of thing. There was a really interesting video where someone was talking about how that money just shifted. It shifted into mana vaults and it shifted into other fast mana and that kind of thing. From the financial side, yes, some people took a bath. Most of the people who only had one lotus or two mana crypt or a dockside, they didn't get hurt that much financially.
But I do want to address
some cards that maybe they liked playing. Whatever.
Exactly. That's 100% right. And I've seen this sentiment a lot. Magic shouldn't be an investment vehicle. And largely, I think we agree with that. I think that that would be a little shocking to some people to hear that we have, you know, if we want to quote unquote invest, we have primary investments that we would consider that's actually where I'm trying to like safely put money for the future. Magic the Gathering is different from that, and we'll agree with you on that. I think that it takes more of a hit. So we're not, I say that to say we're not talking about the people that were sitting on 100 mana crypts, that were sitting on 100 docksides. It sucks for them. It really does, because we would have considered this a low risk place to park money, even though we're not like sitting here shouting, invest your savings in Magic the Gathering, because that's dumb. We don't think that that's a smart idea either. I'm talking more about the investment mentally, the investment emotionally, the investment somewhat financially into just playing the game that you love. There are plenty of people who like proxied up a CEDH deck to try it, see if that's where they wanted to put their money, and then slowly, I see these posts all the time. I saved up this month.
Got a new
I ate a little less groceries this month.
Right.
Because they went hard on a card that they thought was very low risk, of which we've said directly, you can go and find our mana crypt coverage around Ixalan. Multiple times we call that card unbannable. Multiple times we call that a safe, low risk pickup if you can get it in that low window right after release happens. That happens with every freaking set. And so I just wanted to be clear how we view this when we talk about the game as an investment. We agree that it shouldn't be a primary vehicle for you to invest your retirement, let's say, or your like kids' future education fund. But I think that there should be some safety when we're being marketed to in this way, that there should be some safety net for those pieces to not just be completely worthless less than a year later. Woof. That's rough. That's rough, especially when you go back and look at some of the marketing jargon that they used, knowing that they were in conversations about this card being banned. That's rough, and I don't think that'll happen with WotC under the stewardship.
When it is marquee cards that really did help push recent sets, you know, I know Crypt was a little while back, and like, Crypt was LCI, and then before that it was like Double Masters. But then, you know, Jeweled Lotus very recently, and then Dockside pretty recently as well. People feel like, well, holy shit, you know, how did this happen? The
biggest thing with the investing, it shouldn't have been an investment vehicle conversation, which we've now laid out, I hope, in a way that will help you understand where we kind of fall on that. Yes and no. I don't get the sentiment that suddenly WotC is going to have all this power and the fist is going to come down. I think that we're deluding ourselves a little bit to think that the RC was acting with 100% independence in all decisions. I think that that's a little naive. When the power is now consolidated, I just don't understand the sentiment of, oh, well, WotC always makes only consumer, you know, antagonistic choices. Now this is just going to lead them to do that even more with the Commander format. And it's like, I don't know why the RC now officially being under WotC's umbrella is like the 6th Infinity Stone for Thanos, and now he's going to be able to snap and ruin Commander. I don't get that. They've already been like chopping up our wallets with all of the axes they sell on Secret Lair. I don't know why this suddenly gives them more power. So I'd love some examples of that. I'm not saying that that's a dumb thought. I'm saying it just hasn't connected for me, and I haven't seen anybody provide a good, like, well, now this can happen, that shows me that it's different now, other than we will have some voices in the room that are talking about the financial side of the game as well.
I think a lot of people thought that by banning a card like Jeweled Lotus, it tells to Wizards of the Coast, hey, you can't print stuff like this because it'll get banned. You know, there were a lot of different theories, like, you know, clearly Wizards of the Coast had the final say. I mean, they're like gone now. Right. They made a bad decision, and it's like, you out of here.
Exactly.
Community mad at you, we mad. You know,
yeah, like I get it. The abuse was definitely over the top.
It's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation, though, right? Because it's like, if you want to make an impactful ban that you think is good for the health of the format, people aren't going to like it. And I'm sure that in the conversation, or in my opinion, you know, it would have been like, hey, we want to ban these cards, and Wizards is like, if you do that, you know, you got to be able to deal with the backlash of it. Do you think it's going to be that bad? And maybe it was like, oh, you know, I don't know if it is. And then it ends up being, you know, awful and signal boosted by everybody, and every single person has a take on it. You have people saying that they're quitting the game, they're done, they're getting rid of their collection, all this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And then Wizards is like, well, look, we told you.
Yeah, sorry.
And
sorry,
now
but we can't have this. You can't affect our business.
Sorry, you can't do it like this.
No.
And, you know, I do feel for all of these people that have had to kind of like field, you know, really nasty messages and that kind of thing. That's awful and stupid.
It's abhorrent. It's ridiculous. You look so dumb if you're doing that. You are not representing.
It's just Neanderthal
if you think you're representing
behavior.
us or our community, you're like so off base that it's unbelievable. We don't want to associate with you if that's how you handle yourself, privately or publicly. That is just such a ridiculous way to handle this. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that WotC said this is how it's going to be. Let's blame it on the abuse, because we knew that that's what was going to happen anyway.
And I will say as well that I do agree that I do think, you know, and this is where you and I disagree. I do think that Wizards of the Coast and whatever committee that comes up with these choices do need to be separate entities, because it is kind of like a checks and balances kind of thing.
Yeah.
I also know that Wizards of the Coast isn't going to like actively fleece people, because they know that that's going to really annoy them, right? If they're like, hey, here's a set that has Jeweled Lotus and we're going to ban it next year. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's one of the big things that people have been annoyed about. I think the RC, if it were destined to have had more success, would have been a bigger group of people. Obviously, you know, from all sorts of different aspects,
including
you would have
the
some CEDH players and just like kind of people that have different barometers of the community. Just they're kind of like their own little petri dish, and they're like, hey, well, this is our perspective on it. I think if it had been, you know, like, geez, like 20, 30 members. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I know that more brains are better than fewer brains.
Sure. Well, there's definitely ways that you could have done it. Set it up like the executive and the legislative branches. Have your CAG be your Congress. Have your RC that's a tighter group of people. Probably not an even number of people so that we could avoid ties. But then you go into this like, we all have discussions together. They come up with a new thing. They vote on it. They pass it to us. We can say ratified or not. That's like, I came up with that in 30 seconds. There's a ton of holes in it, but something. Yeah. Use your CAG members would be a huge encouragement piece to me if this was able to be salvaged. Have a CAG that actually matters. Might have pulled you out a lot of this.
I do think our friend Travis had a good take that having open discussions and more transparency and humanizing the people on this, and like, you know, they make a video where they're like, hey, we had a huge discussion. We were all in the room for 6 hours. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about fast mana. We talked about, you know, this and that, and we decided ultimately that Nadu was going to go, which was no surprise. And then also we all settled on dockside extortionist, because too often the game devolves into dockside the gathering once it enters the table. People are trying to clone it. They're trying to reanimate it. Everybody wants to get a little piece of the dockside.
Yeah.
Then they say, But also we talked about mana crypt. We talked about jeweled lotus. We talked about fast mana in general. A lot of those kind of cards that enable explosive starts. And with the way Wizards of the Coast is printing cards with ward these days, we do fear that inadequate discussions of power level are going to lead to games that are just non-games where the ward player is able to power out a Voja on turn 2. Having transparency would allow people to find their own deductions. They would be able to be like, well, RC is talking a lot about fast mana in this. I may want to go ahead and pare down my mana crypts just in case.
Exactly.
Like it hasn't been announced.
It's like you should have already done with One Ring, quite honestly. This is not financial advice, but WotC said that card may be a problem, y'all. Maybe your position in that needs to be just adjusted. Maybe you need to look at your full position into One Ring, because
not financial advice.
Not financial advice, but maybe having 100 of those sitting around isn't your best move right now. Maybe that could have also been the discussion over on this side with our format. It is what it is. At this point, I feel like it was inevitable. I feel like this backlash was way too big for them to just be like, this is what we were expecting. I feel like this went way beyond anything. And a lot of it's abhorrent, a lot of it's understandable, a lot of it is like neutral. It's like such a mixed bag regarding this issue. It's unbelievable. And I think that everybody could have a little more understanding. Right, exactly. And the thing is like, y'all, this is a game. This is a game. This isn't some good and evil. This isn't some major, you know, like humanity discussion outside of we shouldn't shit on people that are, number one, volunteers, number two, just guiding a format. That's ridiculous. Disagree with them if you want. I've said it 1,000 times. This isn't some good versus evil. I don't know why even us have taken any position as that is the way. This is good, this is evil, you have made a bad choice and now you're a bad person. I don't know why this has devolved into that. I understand how like everything on the internet and in our just sphere of humanity now is very like you're on this side or you're on that side. I would hope that this issue doesn't come to that, because we have a very clear like position. I don't think we're under any illusions or, you know, trying to make it a mystery what part of the game we engage with the most and like the most. I think that's been pretty clear. We can also say, but they are right about that. They are right about that. I can see that argument at the very least. We need a little bit more of that. Some temperance would be fantastic. I think this was inevitable. I think that it needed to happen, probably, after seeing that. I think that the format has grown beyond a small handful of people maintaining it, even if they do have a CAG, and that was very clear that they weren't using their CAG in a way that we thought was appropriate to get more voices in the room, so to speak. Just like the rules committee last week said, we thought the best way to do this was rip the band-aid off. If this was going to happen, what's the best way to do it? Let's get all this shit out of the way right now. Let's start 2025 fresh. Let's watch whatever this foundation set is going to be. It's going to feel like such small beans after everything that's happened, but moving on.
The perspective that I needed in this was the perspective of the casual player, because I don't go to an LGS and sit down with random people and try to play pickup games of Commander.
Sure.
That's not how I engage in Commander. I have a play group and we're all friends and we're all open and we discuss how we play the game.
And even further, you and I are like mainlined right into our vein. Every single piece of news, anything that happens with this game.
Yeah. For us, you know, I was just recently playing Commander and I was playing Imskir and I had 8 mana untapped on turn 3 after getting into like a really early, you know, Thran Dynamo on turn 2. And I untapped and I went, yeah, this deck does not run Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, or Dockside. It got objectively stronger from the bans. And I went, God, do I really need even more mana than this? I understand people being annoyed by the bans. I was annoyed by the bans. I don't like the bans because I don't think that they needed to happen before I had the perspective of the casual who wants to go and play pickup games, which again, not how I engage with the game. I didn't realize that was such an issue. I do think there's a conversation to be had about people not knowing how to clearly express their power level, or just like deceptively being like, oh yeah, the deck is trash, but then you're like powering out all these cards on turn 1 and 2 and people are like, All right, clearly not. Yeah, man, it is such a mixed bag. The RC going away, it does kind of worry me a little bit, just because I don't know how much power Wizards of the Coast needs to have in their hands. There is part of me as well, tinfoil hat, you know, that thinks that the RC is the fall guy here.
Yes.
And that Wizards and the RC were talking about it, and Wizards does want to kind of push out some cards to make way for Marvel, to make way for Final Fantasy and all these big IPs and universes beyond that are about to come in. I don't know if that's true or not, but having so many decks homogenized, it leaves very little room to be explorative and be like, oh, you know, can I cut this? Can I cut that? No, I have to keep the one ring. I got to keep my mana crypt and this and that. And like, yeah, I don't know if any of that is true. But what we do know is that WotC and the RC were in discussions. And we also know that because of this choice, the RC is gone.
Yeah.
For one reason or another.
I think to that point, dissolved. We'll see and everything will become more clear. That is kind of the point today. Jake and I, you know, we were going to make a different video today from a different angle, still about this, but questions that we think are important to get some opinions and answers on. And this derailed that. But I want to let y'all know, we also had the conversation of, do we make this video today? Do we wait another day or two to see if any more relevant information comes out? This one, we mostly wanted to just talk about the reaction to this news piece because it's enormous. We were getting so many DMs. This article, I woke up, I slept in today because today's my birthday. Happy birthday, Joel. And I woke up to this article in my DMs from so many different people. I was like, well, Jake, we gotta at least make some video. So we did. I would say overall, this is more to our community from the collection side. Buying and selling these cards, that aspect. We should wait, y'all. Nobody should be making any decisions. We said that last week. You shouldn't be making any decisions right now. If you really want to go in like panic sell and just get out, I understand that. Get a good price that you're comfortable with and don't think about it again. Like, that's fine. You did your thing. Don't get like, that's a no regret move as far as I'm concerned. However,
maybe you're like me, you want a foil mana crypt for cube just in case.
Right. There's a lot to talk about as far as like getting rid of and acquiring these cards over the next couple of weeks, but I think we need a little bit more information so that Jake and I can form a full opinion and give you some not financial advice on that. They have said at the end of this article they're going to reevaluate the entire ban list. Hang on, let me see exactly what that quote was, because we will also be evaluating the current ban list alongside both the Commander Rules Committee and the community. We will not ban additional cards as part of this evaluation. While discussion of the ban list started this, immediate changes to the list are not our priority. That has got a lot of subtext, and I don't know what any of it is, but I think that the answer, what the subtext of that sentence is, what those sentences actually mean, are going to come out over the next couple of days and hopefully the next couple of weeks, because I can't imagine, and Jake, you can give me your opinion on this, I can't imagine that WotC would assume control of all of this and not make some move to consolidate power and say, this is ours now. Whether or not it's redo the whole ban list, whether or not it's unban JLo and Mana Crypt and back off, whether, you know, whatever that move is, I feel like typically in these times where power has shifted from one group to another, the group that now controls the power needs to or will make some consolidation move and make it take ownership, so to speak. So I would expect that, but that's what I would wait. What do you think? Do you think that they're going to do anything, or they're just going to sit on their hands?
I think that language is very specific. That implies that something could be done if it needs to be done. I think if anything, they will come back and say that Jeweled Lotus is unbanned because that was a card specifically made for Commander, for a Commander in the Commander format. It's a card that's hot garbage late in the game, unless your Commander desperately needs an extra cast. I think it's a very narrow card. I do understand it from the perspective of quick explosive starts, like leading to non-games. And I think that has to do with people being salty. Just as an opinion, I think like if someone is in a game and my opponent, just speaking for myself, powers out their commander and it leads to a non-game, I would be kind of annoyed. And I'm like, all right, great. You won on turn 3 because you got your thing out. We all conceded. But it's so easy to just shuffle up. So unless you're unless you're going into these games, like keeping track of your KD, You're like, nope, my win-loss ratio.
Your MMR is really
my win-loss
important.
is getting fucking decimated by Jeweled Lotus, dude. My win-loss ratio going into 2024 was freaking 38%, and it's down to like 33% because of
Dockside is banned. My elo will never recover from this.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's a very complex situation. There's obviously going to be more to come out on it.
Yeah.
We promise this isn't going to become Jake and Joel cover the bands forever.
No.
The Gathering, our magic here.
Just wanted y'all to know, as sort of like the resting place for today's events, is that buying and selling them is on our mind too, and we plan to cover that in the near future once we feel comfortable with the amount of information we have. And everybody needs to chill out. Let's just all relax. Let's take a big breath. Let's take a step back. I think that this has made it clear this ain't the end. We got a lot more to come. We can't get riled up every single time. We've beat the whole discussion of the original choices, gameplay versus money. We've beat that to death. We just need to take in the new information as it comes. And right now, honestly, I think we need to support the members of the RC. We need to remember they were volunteers. They were not being paid to do this. We need to remember that they had no sort of corporate security, monetary protection. There's no skin in the game as far as like legality money to cover them in crisis situation. And so it makes sense why this sort of decision was sort of inevitable, because them in and of themselves, they don't really just have any sort of bubble built in to truly protect them from a decision like this. I
stand by how I felt day one. I think it was a dumb ban. I think the bans were stupid. I think that, you know, one way or another, it was not a successful ban. No. It's like, it was not a successful
I think the mere mere fact that we are sitting here talking about this with new information still a week later shows that there was a little too much hastiness. That's the most grace I can possibly give the choice, is that you made it too hastily without enough input. Completely bungled the rollout of it. At this point, I feel like everybody's just further entrenching themselves in. That's what we think about the initial reactions and thoughts to this new news today. And we'll be back when we think it's relevant to discuss this further, if we feel like we've got things to say past just repeating ourselves over and over again.
Let's all clap at Joel and sing him happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joel.
I just want the Braves to make the playoffs today.
Happy birthday to you.
And everybody to stop fighting over Commander. That's it. Cheers. Happy birthday.